Welcome back to another deep dive on The Explainer. Okay, we have a truly fascinating story lined up for you today. We're decoding a brand that honestly doesn't make the world's most complicated products. It doesn't offer the widest variety, and frankly, in our digital age, almost nobody actually needs their product to perform its primary function. Yet, it absolutely reigns supreme. Today we're decoding the anatomy of a phenomenon to see exactly how Rolex became the undisputed king of luxury. I mean, just think about this for a second. We live in an era where literally everyone has a smartphone in their pocket, a phone that connects to atomic clocks, keeping perfect time down to the exact millisecond. Yet, every single year, millions of people dream of owning a piece of mechanically antiquated technology. It's kind of absurd when you really step back and look at it, right? People are willingly paying thousands of dollars above retail prices and waiting on lists for years, just for the chance to buy a watch that runs on gears and springs from another century. So we really have to ask, how on earth did old technology become the ultimate luxury?
Section 1. The Rolex Paradox. To answer that question, we have to unpack a pretty fascinating reality. Rolex is one of the few consumer products on Earth celebrated not because you scored a great discount on it, but simply because you managed to buy it at all.
So here's the crucial takeaway. Rolex's immense success, it's not actually about telling time. It's about mastering trust, engineering status, and executing one of the most relentlessly disciplined branding strategies ever created. Seriously, if you want to understand how to build a legacy brand, consider this your masterclass. Okay, let's dive into this. Section 2, Engineering Unshakable Credibility. To really grasp this strategy, we need to travel back in time a bit to London in the year 1905. Let's look at what the market actually looked like in 1905. It was completely dominated by pocket watches. They were respected, they were seen as serious instruments for serious men. Wristwatches, on the other hand, well, they were wildly viewed as super delicate, mostly worn by women as a fashion accessory, and notoriously inaccurate. Most experts of the era firmly believed there was just no way a small watch could ever be accurate enough for rigorous daily use. But a 24-year-old named Hans Wilsdorf totally disagreed. He made a massive, bold bet that the future of timekeeping belonged on the wrist. But he knew, to get people to actually wear them, he couldn't just build a cheap watch. He had to build the most reliable one in existence. You see, early mechanical movements were incredibly sensitive to dust and moisture. They were watch killers. So Wilsdorf just systematically attacked those vulnerabilities. By 1910, Rolex earned a Swiss precision certificate, and soon after, a rating normally reserved for massive marine chronometers. Then, in 1926 came a huge leap, the introduction of the Oyster. This was the world's first commercially successful waterproof and dustproof watch case. Through relentless engineering, Rolex was solving the exact specific problems that were holding wristwatches back. And this philosophy right here became the absolute bedrock of their entire empire. Rolex wasn't asking people to believe its marketing, it was proving its engineering. They didn't just run ads claiming to be the best, they gave the public undeniable proof. And that gave the young companies something money simply cannot buy: unshakable credibility. Once they established that baseline of pure engineering excellence, Rolex brilliantly shifted gears. Section 3, Marketing Through Achievement. Picture this. It's 1927, just 1 year after they invent the waterproof Oyster case, and Rolex decides to put it to the ultimate test. A young British swimmer named Mercedes Cleats attempts to swim across the freezing waters of the English Channel, and she's wearing a Rolex. After spending hours in the harsh, cold seawater, she emerges, and guess what? The watch is still ticking perfectly. Rolex instantly sees this moment. They plastered the successful test all across newspaper advertisements. Almost overnight, the public wasn't just looking at a fancy accessory anymore. They were looking at a luxury product backed by grueling, undeniable real-world performance. And Rolex basically took that exact same formula and expanded it to create purpose-built icons. They didn't make exaggerated promises. Instead, they associated their watches with extraordinary human achievements. As aviation boomed, they created the GMT Master to help pilots track multiple time zones. When deep-sea diving really advanced in the 1950s, boom, they introduced the Submariner for both recreational and professional divers. The Daytona became the undisputed watch of motorsport. The Datejust introduced practical daily innovations that set industry standards. These weren't flashy fashion pieces, you know. They were highly functional tools. Which brings us to a massive psychological shift. By proving their watches on the wrists of explorers reaching the summit of Mount Everest in 1953 and divers braving the crushing ocean depths, Rolex wasn't simply selling watches anymore. It was selling confidence. Every single historical milestone, every extreme expedition, it just forged this ironclad association between the brand and absolute, unshakable reliability. Section 4. Consistency and cultivating scarcity. Because having a great history, well, that isn't enough to dominate the modern market.
Think about other luxury brands for a second. Many of them are constantly chasing fashion trends, reinventing themselves every single season just to stay relevant. Rolex does the exact opposite. They practice evolution instead of revolution. Their catalog is surprisingly focused. They aren't out there introducing dozens of entirely new collections every year. Instead, they make these tiny, careful refinements to existing models over decades. We're talking new materials, better movements, slightly enhanced durability. Because of this, a Submariner bought today is unmistakably related to one from generations ago. This consistency means a Rolex won't suddenly look outdated in 5 years, which completely protects the buyer's investment and allows these watches to become, true, cherished family heirlooms.
And that leads us straight into the modern Rolex buying experience. Unlike some ultra-niche brands that artificially limit production to tiny, tiny numbers, Rolex actually manufactures a substantial number of watches globally. But, and here is the absolute genius of it, the global demand massively exceeds that robust supply. You can't just walk into a dealer on a Tuesday and buy a stainless steel Daytona. It doesn't happen. Waiting lists form, sometimes for months, very often for years. This shortage creates a booming secondary market where prices literally skyrocket above official retail value. And Rolex rarely comments publicly on these shortages, which honestly just fuels the mystique even more. This scarcity loop means that owning a Rolex becomes not only a financial purchase, but an achievement in itself. You didn't just buy it, you earned the right to buy it. Section 5. The Foundation Advantage. So how do they actually maintain this incredible discipline? Why haven't they just cashed in, flooded the market, and ruined their brand equity like so many others? Let's look at the ultimate test of their discipline, the 1970s quartz crisis. Suddenly, cheap, incredibly accurate, mass-produced electronic quartz watches hit the market. The entire Swiss mechanical watch industry went into full-blown panic mode. Mechanical watches suddenly looked entirely obsolete. But while other companies scrambled and compromised their brands trying to compete on price and electronics, Rolex just stayed calm. They carefully adapted, sure, but they absolutely refused to abandon their identity. They realized people weren't just buying accuracy anymore, they were buying heritage. So, Rolex doubled down on craftsmanship and prestige. They were able to survive this existential threat because of a brilliant strategic setup. Rolex is owned by the Hans Wilsdorf Foundation. Because they are not a publicly traded corporation, they face literally zero pressure from outside shareholders demanding maximized quarterly earnings. They don't have to chase short-term fads just to boost a stock price for Wall Street. Brand reputation always takes priority over rapid expansion. They measure their decisions in decades, not quarters. And this structural freedom is exactly what protected their identity through massive economic recessions and crazy technological revolutions. Section 6. The Business of Trust. Which brings us to our final takeaway. What is this company actually manufacturing behind those closed factory doors? It's trust. You see, a Rolex has evolved into something much larger than a tool to tell time. It is the anatomy of a symbol. For so many people, it marks a major life milestone, a big promotion, a successful business exit, a graduation. It represents years of hard work, literally sitting right there on your wrist. Rolex constantly reinforces this emotional connection by partnering with highly prestigious sporting events, tennis, golf, sailing, suddenly aligning themselves with pure excellence rather than fleeting pop culture trends. And underneath it all, they back up that symbol with strict proprietary manufacturing standards and extensive testing that the customer rarely even sees, but they always feel it in the form of total reliability. Competitors might invent more intricate complications, They might finish their metals to a higher artistic standard, and they can certainly surpass Rolex in pure technical complexity, but they cannot easily recreate over 100 years of earned trust. Rolex didn't try to be the flashiest, they tried to be the most trusted. And in the world of luxury, trust is worth far more than perfection. In a world where technology becomes obsolete almost overnight, Rolex proved that timelessness can be the ultimate innovation. So I want to leave you with this final, provocative thought. Just look at how incredibly fast everything moves today.
Look at the intense pressure to constantly disrupt and reinvent yourself. Based on the incredible success of Rolex's deliberate century-long strategy, in an era completely obsessed with speed, what timeless value is your industry forgetting to build? Take that question with you today, focus learners. Thanks for joining me on The Explainer, and keep questioning the mechanics behind the success.